So hello everyone, my name is Ana Maria Radu and today I will be your host. I'm part of the WooCommerce community and I'm here to let you know that you're in the right place. We're very happy to have you today. Today we will talk about how to get started in e-commerce. Now, e-commerce can be complicated, yet getting started doesn't need to be complicated. And that's exactly what we're focused on today. Jonathan and Noëlle, who I'll introduce in a moment, will teach you how to go from an idea to your first customer. Our goal today is to inspire you, to empower you, and to make it as easy as possible for you to get started in e-commerce. The first hour of the event is where we'll focus on these 7 chapters that we're going to talk about. And then we will follow up with a 30-minute session for questions and answers. Now, a few things that you need to know before we get started. First and foremost, this event is recorded. We will publish it afterwards, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay connected. All questions are welcome. We've even got volunteers in the chat to help you, and we'll have dedicated time for questions at the end. Also, make sure you keep an eye on the questions I will be asking you in the chat. Now, without any further ado, I would like to introduce our WooCommerce Live hosts. We'll have together with us Noëlle, freelance developer and community volunteer. Hello, Noëlle.
Hey, so happy to be here.
Happy to have you. And also Jonathan, who works in community for WooCommerce. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Hello. Okay, I will pass it over to you. I hope you will have a lot of fun. Get your notes ready and let's get started.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Anna. Awesome. Well, it is great to be here. Hello to everyone. So we have a mission here at WooCommerce, and that mission, the way that we think about it, is we could call it democratizing commerce. And for us, that means making e-commerce and this process of getting started as easy as possible for everyone. And we do that in a few ways. We do that through education, through things like WooCommerce Live. And we do that through software, great open source software like WooCommerce itself. And we do that through community. And we have these incredible meetups and spaces all around the world that we'll tell you a bit more about later. I realize my camera's out of focus, but I'll fix it in a moment. So today in this event, this is, as Anna mentioned, this is all about getting started. This is all about just getting started and helping you get up and running as easy as possible. And to do that, we've thought through, like, what are all the things that you need to know and where should you be focusing your energy? And we've distilled it into 7 steps, which we'll be sharing with you today. Let's take a look at what those are really quick. And let's bring that up on the screen here. So these are the 7 steps. We're going to talk about choosing an audience, finding a problem to solve, selling something before you make it, which is really interesting. We're going to talk about creating a product, choosing an operating system to run your store on, getting the product to your customer, and then all of that in service of creating happy customers. And we want you to think of these as like high-level principles, right? Like this is how to think about the process of getting started. There's a lot of technical guidance out there, and we'll give you some resources at the end. But we believe that the most important thing is to focus on the business side of it, and that's in your own head and how you think as the entrepreneur and the value that you're focused on providing. So that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to talk through these 7 steps. Noëlle and I will go back and forth. We'll explain each of the steps. We will share some examples with you. We'll recap it. We'll move on. At the end, we'll recap it again. But we want you to just sit back, focus on taking it in and hearing from us how to think about e-commerce. And then at the end, we'll give you resources and some guidance on like how to jump in and get started on some of the technical parts of it. But we believe strongly that the most important is like how you're thinking about it. And we find these principles, they work really well. We've seen people, so many people have built amazing stores and on WooCommerce, and we know that you can do the same, and that's what we want to help you do. So I think that's about it. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass it over to Noëlle, and she's going to kick us off with step number 1, which is choosing an audience. Over to you, Noëlle.
Thanks, Jonathan. So Let me tell you why choosing an audience is important. Because I'm a web developer and I've worked with a lot of clients over the years. So when I ask them, who do you want to market to? Then many of them will tell me, I wanted to market to everyone. I want to reach as many people as I can. And while that's quite a logical thing to say, obviously you want to sell your product to a lot of people, it doesn't really work. You will want to connect with people. So when you do this blanket generic approach, you're not really going to connect with your audience. So you want to, for example, when you write your copy, once you've zoomed in on your audience and you know who you're talking to, when you write the copy for your website, you will be able to really connect with these people. And when they read this copy, they'll be like, hey, they know me, they understand me. So the likelihood that they're then going to place an order is a lot higher than when you're trying to target everybody and writing this really generic copy. Exactly. That's just an example. And there's two ways you can engage with your audience. Either you can connect with them yourself, so a group that you're already part of or want to be part of, or you can connect with somebody who's going to be the insider for you and who's going to do the research and feedback to you, and you're going to make decisions from there. So when you want to narrow down your audience, there's two things that you can look at. There is external similarities and internal similarities. External similarities are also known as demographics, and they're things you can see from the outside. So say age and gender, location, the language somebody speaks. But now imagine a restaurant that would just say like, okay, I'm targeting everybody within 20 miles. But what if these people don't like the cuisine that the restaurant serves? They wouldn't get anywhere. So let's look at the internal similarities. They're things that you cannot see from the outside, but they are very important because it tells more about who this person is and what they care about. So, for example, it can be love for dogs or an allergy they have to take into account, or they can care for the environment and want to only shop eco-friendly products. In a restaurant example, imagine that this restaurant focuses on the banting diet. So if they then target everybody within a 20-mile radius who's interested in banting, their audience is getting a lot more specific. So then when they're going to market to the audience and write the copy to their website, that will really be connecting with them. So, Jonathan, you had a few examples of websites where people have a really clear audience, right? Would you show them to us?
Yes, and I've never heard of the banting diet. That sounds clearly I'm not the target audience for that. Let me pull up here. So we've got a couple of great examples here. This one I like a lot. It's a dog food company in Australia that focuses on serving Australian pet owners, right? So there's a few things about this. Like you could say that you just serve pet owners all over the place, but they focused on dogs specifically, and it's dog owners in Australia. They do a great job of telling the story, and like they identify. So the idea here with the audience, they chose dog owners in Australia and to the point that Noëlle just made about internal similarities, who care about like high quality dog food and or environmentalism, like they care about the environment as well. So they've picked dog owners in Australia who care about having high quality food for their animals. And that's an important distinction, right? Like, 'cause you might say it's for dog owners, but dog owners who care about what, right? Because some people love their dogs, but not everyone cares about the food the same.
Exactly.
The other example that I really liked was this one here so coin guitar picks. And first off, the audience is clear, right? Like they're serving guitar owners, guitar players, presumably. Not necessarily. I guess you could own a guitar and not play it. I got mine back here, but I work on playing it. The picks thing, though, is a great example. I didn't even know this was a thing. Like people really get into collecting them. So it's people who care about having sort of custom picks, and they've got or want just special types of memorabilia, or maybe they want to do a special gift for someone. for the guitar owner in the family. So I thought that was super cool. Good example of being focused in on specific audience. And you can see that when you go to the site. Like, this is for people who like guitars. This one is for people who like have dogs, and it becomes clear pretty quickly that care about the food. And for this one here, that they care about this idea of having the custom picks. So those are the examples I got. Back over to you, Noëlle, to wrap us up.
Thanks for those examples, Jonathan. They are really clear. So to summarize this, it is all about being specific. Don't be afraid to miss out. It's not about numbers here. It's people who you truly connect with, who you in time learn to understand, and they will bring you the sales in the end.
Awesome.
So on to step 2, finding a problem to solve. Because many entrepreneurs, they will actually start with a product, not with choosing an audience and finding a problem. So they create a product and they start marketing it. And then sales can be underwhelming because their product might not be solving a problem. That's why it's important to define that first. And everyone has problems, and people will pay you to solve their problems. So what you got to do is to hang out where your audience hangs out, or have your insider hang out where your audience hangs out. And, that might be in Facebook groups or other online communities. I mean, obviously online in this time is now more prominent than in person, but that will hopefully change again. And, and you learn about them. And problems are, I'd like to think of them as unmet needs. And there's lots of different ones because every audience is different. But some examples, for example, are physical. So, say you need to eat. You're looking maybe for a place to stay while you're traveling. It can be psychological, like maybe learning a cooking skill or something like that. That can be practical. Say you're doing a DIY project and you need screws and shells and that kind of thing.
Yep.
And it can also be work related. Maybe you want to learn a new skill to add to your CV and have a better opportunity at jobs. So those are just a couple of examples. And what you can do is you have 2 options here, really, when you choose which problem to solve. Either you will choose a big problem, or you can choose a small one that you use to gain momentum and that you can work your way up to the bigger problem. That might be useful if maybe the big problem is really sensitive and you need to build the trust with people first. So, Jonathan, do you have a few examples for us of website where the problem that they're solving is really clear?
As a matter of fact, I do. Let me pull this up. So I love this example. We covered this in season 2 of WooCommerce Live, and it's such a cool story because COVID has impacted a lot of businesses, and in their case, it was folks in the UK that used to suddenly people weren't picking up the composting bins, if I'm recalling the details correctly. Yes. And so Guarantia stepped in and is like, okay, there's a new problem here that needs to be solved. They have this audience of folks in the UK, and people were now stuck at home. They wanted to compost, but didn't know how to go about it. And so they released a line of products, starting with composters, water collectors, et cetera, to focus on solving that problem for folks stuck at home who still wanted to do composting and who valued those types of things. And sometimes, it's not even if you value, you just have to get rid of the compost to figure out what you're going to do with it, right? So I love that's a great example of all right, we have a customer base here who has a new problem to solve. What can we do to solve them? And they've done really well by focusing on that. Another example that I think is a lot of fun here, we have this camping exchange site where they're focused on two different problems. The first one is folks who have camping gear but don't really do anything with it, just sitting around. And this can be a great way to get it back out into the market. Although for me, I might feel guilty about it, because like sometimes it's like, all right, keep my tent around. If I get rid of it, then I'm not going to camp at all, which wouldn't be terrible. The other thing that the other problem they focus on solving is folks who are just looking for a good deal, right? Like you're aware that there's camping gear out there that is gently used or not being used at all, and you want to give it a better home. And so they focus nicely on solving those. And that's what it's all about, right? Like at the end of the day, like you said, people pay to solve problems. And I think these sites are both good examples of that in action. So it was great to see. All right, back over to you.
Yes, I agree. They're great examples. So to wrap step 2 up, listen to your audience. And then while you're like engaging with them, like when you come across things, say you're engaging in a Facebook group and you notice things, keep a list and make notes there when you come across things. So you have a list of problems, big and small. You can see which ones are recurring more than others, and then choose the problem that you think will be most helpful to solve.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So now that takes us to step number 3. You have chosen an audience. You found some problems to solve. Now we want you to sell your idea before you go in and make it. And what is this about, right? Like this is something that we hear. I love to talk about, because some people get it right away. Others are like, what are you talking about? And at the heart of it is that, like, as an entrepreneur, you come up with an idea, right? And you think it might be a good fit. And sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Our problem in this case is that we don't know until we get it out there. And what we don't want to see you do is go out and make something and make something that ends up not being a good fit for the audience that you're serving. So the idea again here is you've chosen an audience, you found a problem to solve. And now you want to go and make sure that the idea that you come up with is actually going to solve the problem. Why? If you can sell your product successfully before you make it, that helps you make sure that the product actually works for the audience. It also gives you the opportunity to make your product better. Maybe you come up with an initial idea, right? You have an idea for a product and it's a good one, and you go out and talk to 10 people about it, and they're like, yeah, that's actually really good. I'd love that. And could it do this? And maybe you come up with some ideas for different options you could offer your product in, or some small adjustments to it. By selling it before you make it, you make sure it solves a problem. You make sure that it is that you welcome the opportunity to make it a bit better for them. And then the other big factor in this, as an entrepreneur, you have to deal with risk, right? And if you can sell something before you make it, it's an opportunity to lower your risks. We don't want you sitting around with a bunch of inventory and no one buying it, right? So, and selling it before you make it can take different forms. So let's talk about the how for a moment. At the highest level, what this is all about is creating an offer. And you can do that in any number of ways. A common example is you might put together a website where you could do something like this in like a Kickstarter type thing. You could put together a website with a waiting list where you put the idea out there and then you invite people to get on the waiting list for it. You could talk to people in person. That doesn't really matter as much, but the principle of the matter is to like get an offer out there and then test that offer with real people. Noelle's mentioned the Facebook groups a couple of times. Like, go to where your community is, get the offer in front of them, to where the audience that you're wanting to serve is, and test it. And then repeat that process as needed. I don't know about for you guys, but for me as an entrepreneur, it's a very energizing process, but it can also be like, oh, I want to move on. I want to get to the product. This is a magical time, because the more feedback that you get, these are folks who will actually buy your product, and they can give you just invaluable feedback about how to make it better and a better match for their needs. So sell something before you make it, create an offer, test the offer, and then repeat as needed. Noëlle, we've got a couple of good examples of this. Can you talk us through those examples?
Yes, absolutely. So the first website I would like to share with you guys is from Tiny Wood Stove, and they saw an opportunity when they were looking for wood stoves efficient wood stoves that would fit in a tiny space. And you can see that immediately here, what they do, it's very, very clear. I like that. They have a thing here what says, I want to put a stove in my, and then you can see they think about tiny houses, vans, yurts even, and then you click continue, and it will like take you to the page where it has all the information that you need, and you can tell them about like what you picked out and your space, and and they will like personally get back to you, which is quite amazing. And they did a thing where when they started that company, they sold it before they went big. And I believe, Jonathan, do I recall correctly that they at first started by importing ones from overseas, and then they eventually started manufacturing? Is that correct?
They had a small audience. They started with say, hey, do you guys want this? They imported it, and then eventually they realized, wow, there's actually an opportunity to make the product better. So that led to them getting into manufacturing. And each time they made sure that people wanted it before they made it.
Yes, which is so smart. So so that's very well done. And then there's another one that I want to share with you, which is this one called Bang On Books. It's a store in the UK, and they do personalized children's books. It is the cutest thing. So they sell it before they make it, because every one is unique to the child, right? Every book is made to order. They have different stories, and the parent will like enter the child as the hero. It is just really, really wonderful. I mean, if I was in the UK and I had a little one, I knew what to do here. Jonathan, back over to you.
That's so cool. So selling it before you make it, at the end of the day, I'm just gonna bring this back, is we want you to focus, make sure that you're focused. And the reason you do this is that you stay focused on solving real problems, right? Like, it's easy sometimes. You picked an audience, you found a problem to solve. Sometimes our ideas can just sort of get off the rails, and selling it before we make it helps us just make sure that we're solving real problems. The way that you do that is create an offer. Do it as simple as possible. Don't put too much effort into this at this point. This, of course, depends on the audience that you're serving, but create an offer in whatever way that you can, and then test that offer, repeat it as needed. And then on the other side of that, then you know that you've picked an audience, you found a problem to solve, and they actually want to pay for the solution that you've come up with. And that's the key to where all this starts. Once you've done that, it's time to make the product. Well, want to talk to us about that?
Yes, absolutely. So creating a product, it's where everything comes together and the magic happens, right? You've defined the audience, you found a problem to solve, you've pre-solved it. So now it's going to be hands-on. And there's so many different routes that you can take when it comes to creating a product. And there's different factors that you will want to consider. So, for example, you may or may not be ready to invest a lot of money up front. If you work with a lot of inventory, then you will need to think of storage, which also comes with a cost and logistics. You may care about whether or not something is labor intensive or scalable. So, when you choose which route to take these things into consideration. So, for example, you can hand make your product, which is really easy to start. I, for example, know a lovely woman who one night brought cookies to a dinner party, and they were so incredibly well received that the word spread, and she started baking these cookies in her kitchen. I mean, all she had to do was get ingredients, bake the cookies, and sell them. Easy, really. Very easy entry. And then once demand grew, then she could scale up, and then she could put money back into a company to get now a commercial kitchen, which is really smart. Handmade also means it's a bit more labor, or can be more labor intensive. Yep. And it might be a bit trickier to scale because you'll immediately need more people to make the product. You can also go the route to manufacture your product, either yourself or outsource that entirely. The downside here is if you outsource that, the minimum order might be quite high, and you may or may not be ready to invest that kind of money. Plus, you'll need to store all that inventory somewhere as well. You can also create digital products. And what I love about that is that it is so scalable. Because imagine you create a course about teaching somebody how to draw. It doesn't make a lot of difference whether you sell 10, 100, or 1,000. You will, of course, do the customer service, which is also easy to outsource if you would want to. But it's completely different than when you would hand make 10, 100, or 1,000 products. There is also drop shipping, which for those who are not familiar, it is when a customer places an order with you, you place an order with a manufacturer, and then the manufacturer ships directly to the customer, which means that you don't have to think about inventory, which is fantastic. There's no upfront cost. It also means that you don't really have much control over the shipping process. But that might be okay, depending on your setup. The competition might be a little bit higher because it's also an easier one to get into, but it also depends on your niche. There's also print on demand that you can think of, which is pretty cool. So you can draw or photograph or hand letter cool quotes, and you can have it printed on mugs and t-shirts and pillows and anything you can imagine pretty much. There are awesome companies that integrate really well with WooCommerce to do that. So that all you have to do is create the artwork and put it on your store, and I will handle all the rest of the process, which is pretty awesome. Obviously, they will take a cut for that in exchange. So your profit will be a little bit less, but it's a cool route to take. And then lastly, think about productizing service. So, it can be anything, say, for example, like graphic design or video editing or coaching or anything like that. Lots can be done online now as well, of course. And when
Especially
you productize it, especially now, and when you productize a service, people often then focus on having like steps to execute that are the same every single time, which makes it very efficient. Also makes it easier to train somebody when the steps are very clear. So it's important to start small, as small as possible, really, as you can, and test and keep it simple. You can always get a little bit and sell it and wait for the feedback and improve on that, rather than buying thousands and thousands of stock to find out that maybe your audience just wanted it a little bit different like this or a little bit different like that. So do we...
Yeah, so I've got some examples.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, so Anna's asked for some examples. We'll show those in a moment, but I wanted to jump in with an example from my daughter. So my daughter's 7, and she came to me one day and she's like, she's been doing this artwork, and she's like, I want to put this on products. Like, I don't know where she got the idea, but I wanted to show her a print on demand, and she's like, I want that, and I want that. She picked a bag and like a shirt. And it was such a great example. Like, she'd done this artwork on her iPad, and we were able to put it on a simple little WooCommerce site with a print-on-demand integration, and it worked beautifully. And she goes to, so we obviously had to get some for her as well, which I paid for, funnily. I remember talking to her about, you mentioned the thing about print-on-demand is it's so convenient. You do have to accept that they're taking a big cut. When we priced it at like $20, my daughter was like, "Oh, awesome! I get $20 a shirt." No, you don't get $20 a shirt. You get like $3 a shirt after they take their cut. And she didn't like that. But after I explained how margin works, I'm like, "Honey, you just did the artwork, and they're taking care of everything else." It was she accepted that. So that's a great example. And yeah, would love to see what kind of examples that you guys have found of either products that you've really enjoyed, or products that maybe you've already created. So Anna, what examples, if any, that you have for us? Whoops, let me just put this on there. Awesome. Oh, it looks like I'm having some trouble with showing this stuff on the screen. Sorry, guys. Okay, well, I can't get it up on the screen, but we asked the question of folks if they had examples of products that they really liked. And Noëlle, while we got this, any other examples that come to mind for you? Like for me, I'm a bit of a sucker for Apple products personally, because of just, I don't know, been in it for a long time, and I love sort of what they're all doing. Do you have any product examples that are favorites of yours, things that you've bought over the years and really liked?
Yes, I've been buying from this company called Lash for like literally over a decade, or even like since I was a child. No kidding. They do like really beautiful but also sustainable shower gels and body lotions and all those kind of things, and they smell amazing. Like I have a shower gel now that smells like basically like a campfire with marshmallows, but like in the best way possible. It's like so cozy. And they do lots of things for charities and stuff as well. They've been around for a while, so I really like supporting them. Yeah, I think just the way they approach marketing and how they involve people to like vote on new fragrances and things is just awesome.
Oh man, it feels so good too. Like when a product really solves a problem, that it is that like magic experience, right? Where it's like, this is exactly what I wanted. For me, like one of my favorite little products, I love a harmonica, and the experience that I had in getting it. And it's like, man, we can even grow like just really emotionally attached to it. Like there's this experience that you get from it. Oh man, anyway, that's great. So I'll give it back over to you to recap, and then we'll get to the next one. Let me pull this up real quick, and let me put this on the screen, and there we go.
Okay, so yeah, to wrap this one up, it's really important to, stay focused, start small, keep it simple, but really focus on your audience and the problem. It's all about solving that problem and understanding their needs.
Perfect.
Jonathan, over to you for step 5.
Awesome. All right. Step number 5 is choose an operating system. This is the first time any technical pieces sort of come into the puzzle, right? You've picked an audience, no technical knowledge required. You have found a problem to solve. Also, this is all about listening and following their lead. You have sold it before you made it. At that point, maybe you did a website, but that really should be as simple as possible. Maybe you did it in person. You then made the product, and this is at this point the steps can kind of get intermingled, right? Because you might put together the website while you're making the product, etc. But this is just how we encourage you to be thinking about the process. And now it's time to choose an operating system that you're going to run this store that you're creating on. And an operating system, it's a concept we're all familiar with. We use them to run our phones, our computers. It's software that you use to manage something. And in this case, we're managing an online store, right? You're starting an e-commerce business. You're going to need something to let you operate it and keep up with it. And when it comes to choosing an operating system, there are 2 common types of operating systems. There is our open source software. WordPress is a great example with WooCommerce on it. We think of this as something that you own, that's yours to sort of work with. And then there's proprietary software, online platforms like Squarespace, Shopify, etc. We like to think of them as like operating systems that you rent, right? They're not yours, but you use them to power your store. And the question becomes like, how do you choose between these different options? It's fair to call out my personal bias. I love Woo. I love WordPress and have been a part of this ecosystem for a long time, as Noëlle. There are pros and cons to both. And ultimately, what we want is for you to pick what's best for your needs as you're sort of getting started. And there's a few factors that we recommend that you consider as you're making a decision about what operating system to use to manage your store. The first factor is ownership. think about whether it's important or not to you to own the website, or is it perfectly fine to rent it? Like starting out, sometimes it might make sense. Let me just use someone else's platform and get up and running with that. That might be a great fit, but think about whether that matters to you or not. Think about flexibility. Do you need the ability to customize the site? Do you want to really create something that is particularly well suited for your audience, or does something that already exists work for you kind of as it is? Right. And flexibility is especially important when you think about the longer term, right? Like out of the gate, you want things to be as simple as possible. Do you want to really customize the checkout experience? Do you want to make sure that just really bring your brand into the look and feel of the site? And then last, I highly encourage you to think about community. Do you want to be a part, like how much do you value being part of a larger community where you can get support and be part of other folks who are trying to do the same things? WordPress and WooCommerce, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of folks who use them, are really great options if you value ownership. They're open source software, which means that when you use it, it's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. The license that WordPress and WooCommerce are built on guarantees that. You can do whatever you want with it. You're not renting it. You'll find a place to host it for you, but it's yours and you can move it wherever you'd like to. WordPress and WooCommerce are also good choices if you value flexibility and you anticipate either need that up front or anticipate needing that in the future. Subscription businesses can be a great example where you really want to kind of customize the look and feel of and the experience that customers are having. And then last, that you value community. WordPress at this point is massive. There's a massive community around it. As with WooCommerce, there's a large community growing there. And because there's this sort of shared sense of ownership, because it's open source software, people are willing to help each other out, right? Like the more of you that have success with WooCommerce and WordPress, the more that those of us who are using it also have success. So we're incentivized to help you and see you succeed. And that's something that's special. And there's all sorts of great communities out there. In my experience, having been in open source for a long time, the open source community is especially special. And so everything that we've shown you so far has been on WooCommerce and WordPress, and great examples, but we've got a couple more examples we wanted to share that sort of give you a sense of the range that WooCommerce brings to the table. So Noëlle, you want to bring those up for us?
Yes, 100%. But first, I just want to add about community, because when I started out about 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago now, I was like, I didn't even know how to use Facebook. Okay. So I had this idea for online store that I just couldn't let go, but I had no resources at all. I realized I had to do every single thing myself. So it was me and Google pretty much. And back then versus now, in terms of documentation and things like that, is a major difference. You didn't have all these beautiful YouTube tutorials and stuff that you have now. So I ended up in Facebook groups. And honestly, if it wasn't for those Facebook groups, I never would have become a developer. I never would have been where I am now. I was just so pleasantly surprised that so many people that are generous with their time and patient to help out the newbie that I was, That's why I love volunteering and giving back a little bit to the community, because I know what it was like to be there. And I haven't seen a community like that anywhere else. So it's hugely valuable. And I bet that for new store owners, but also more advanced store owners, it will be very valuable to them. So just wanted to add that. Awesome. Then I have two cool examples to share, both on WooCommerce. One smaller store and one big store. And man, I just love the design of this. It's unique. It really sticks. And it's personalized. I mean, just look at this.
That's amazing.
And it's clear as well. Like, I love how they describe the steps, but they make it fun and animated and illustrated instead of just listing them. They did such a good job. And then, like, say when you go here, You can like personalize your jar, which is just the cutest thing.
Another good example of selling something before you make it.
Yes, that as well. So you have all your different mix, and you can do your font and enter your text. Really awesome gift idea.
That's so cool.
So that's a small business, really cool small business. And then we've got this one, which is the almond stroopwafels. I'm Dutch, so
You did that really well. I was like, wow.
I know stroopwafels very well. They're delish. If you ever get the chance to eat one, please do so. But this is a massive international site that, like, I know you can go and like even customize your own tin, and you have this whole like builder where you can like stick things on there. It is just, it's so international. And I mean, you have the whole thing here with the different currencies and the different languages. I love, by the way, how they have the reviews always like visible here in the top. That's very smartly done. Yeah, so this means like it's actually like they will put your images on the tin and stuff. Yeah, it's just super cool. So it's 2 examples, completely different, both done with Woo. And that's what I love with Woo is you can, if you want to get up and running quick, and start simple, like, which is what we recommend, then you can do that. If you want to customize it beyond and, go crazy, both with design and functionality, you can too. Like, it's pretty much limitless, honestly, in my opinion. So yeah, it's just so diverse. I love that.
Awesome. So from our perspective, if you want to get started, we recommend that you use WooCommerce on WordPress. WordPress and WooCommerce are a great combination if you value ownership, if you want that flexibility, and community is important to you. It's worth calling out that there is a bit of a learning curve, right? The WooCommerce community works really hard, and the software is getting better all the time to just make it easier to use. And this year alone, we've had a bunch of new releases to make it better. It does take some time to learn, and that's part of why community is such a valuable thing, where there's folks who are willing to jump in, answer your questions, and because we want to see you succeed on it, right? Because the more people succeed, the more that sort of shared sense of ownership kicks in. And at this point, I think according to builtwith.com, I'll butcher this. We can share this after. Right now we're about 25% of all online stores run on WooCommerce. So you're part of a big community of folks using Woo. And that's a big deal, right? Like you're not first to the party. There's a lot of folks that are willing to help you, and it's growing all the time. So that's choosing an operating system. Not last, we're getting closer to the end here. That takes us to step 6. You've chosen an operating system, you got it up and running. Now you want to get the product to your customer. And there's a couple of things that I want to encourage you to think about here. So at this point, based on the audience that you've chosen, that's going to determine, like, okay, is it an international audience? Is it a local audience? And the key idea here is to just think through what options you have for delivery and what makes the most sense for the customers that you're serving. And as you're thinking about that, we want you to start thinking about the experience that they're going to have. Frankly, and this is good for you, the bar is pretty low online, right? You have a few big players who do a really good job with experience, and a lot of folks don't. And it's not because they can't. It seems to be something that's kind of overlooked. So experience starts from the ordering process and the options that you give them and what that looks like to help them see like how they get the product to you. We'll show you some examples of that in a little bit here. And then it goes all the way through to when the product arrives. And this is where it's important to know what your options are. So there doesn't tend to be more than a few shipping carriers available, but those shipping carriers can be pretty different in terms of what that experience is like. And you want to make sure that you've chosen carriers and options that are good for the audience that you're wanting to serve. And as you're thinking about that, so the delivery is one part of it. The other part to think about is packaging. Noelle's going to talk a bit more about things like the unboxing experience, but I just want you to start thinking about, as you're thinking about delivery, focus first on just making sure the product arrives safely if it's a physical product. If it's a digital product, delivery is also important. Think about, what does that first screen look like that they're going to get? So if they get an email with special access to something, what does that look like? What type of experience are you giving them when it first arrives? And that's at the heart of all of this. Is we want you to start thinking about and be focused on what experience you're going to give your customer. You've chosen an audience, you found a problem to solve, you sold it before you made it, you've got it all up and running. Now make sure that you see it all the way through and say, okay, let's make sure that they have a good experience in getting and having the product delivered to them. One little quick tip: if you're serving customers in the US and soon to expand on WooCommerce, take a look at WooCommerce shipping. We'll post a link afterwards in the follow-up. That's a great option for being able to get access to carriers all within your dashboard. It's free to use, and it's pretty powerful. So, and we'll be expanding to other countries in the future. If you're not using WooCommerce shipping, if you're not focused on folks in the US, there are a bunch of extensions for all the major carriers available that you can add in and have access to all of that within WooCommerce. So it is great for that. Awesome. So those are some thoughts on shipping and how to getting the product to your customer. Noëlle, will you take us through a couple examples?
Yes, absolutely. So the first one is this Oyster website. And well, when you land, you can immediately see, why it's delivery focused, because they highlight the most local oyster and help you reduce your carbon footprint, which is awesome. Okay, so I have a zip code here and I click submit. And then just now it will spit out the nearest oysters. I don't know why it's struggling a little bit. Just bear with me.
This is what happens when we do it live, but we like to take the risk.
Yeah. Okay, so here we go. So you've got your oyster classes. Super, super cool, which I believe they're online, and they express courier everything that you need to you. I wonder if that was adapted during COVID
that
or
feels
not,
like
or
an adaptation, a good adaptation.
Or if they were, but it's very, very smart, very well done that. And then the other example that I want to share is this website for meal plans, where they will ship everything that you need once a week to you. And what I love is that they use, I know they use mostly sustainable packaging. So they're trying to do their thing for the environment. And they work with a couple of different couriers, and then through the couriers you can sign up for instant SMS notifications, which is really nice as well, which also links back to what I talked about. What I am actually gonna talk about just now is communicating with your customer during the sales process, so that they know when to expect. So these instant notifications via SMS are just perfect for that. Jonathan, back to you.
That's fantastic. So wrapping this one up, delivery and getting the product to your customer is all about focusing on the experience. Work to keep them informed. You can be creative with packaging, and just stay focused on what experience am I having, whether it's a physical product or a digital product, and look at that experience through the lens of the customer, get feedback from them as well. And Noëlle will talk about that as we sort of wrap this up. Let's go on to the last step in this process. Noëlle?
Yes, so the last step is all about, everything that we're working towards is creating happy customers. Creating customers, just customers, is maybe good short term, maybe, but definitely not long term. Because if you make the effort and you build a relationship with these people, they can become repeat customers, which is awesome. And they may become an ambassador for your brand. They can share on social media, they can share it with their friends, with their family, and bring you new customers. So it's just so valuable. And I've seen studies where, they show that acquiring new customers versus getting existing customers to come back. The latter is a whole lot less effort actually and cheaper, if you look into things like advertising and stuff. So, that's why you definitely should be doing this. And an important factor here is communication during sales and after sales. I just mentioned the instant SMS notifications as an example. Definitely make sure that your customer knows, what they're in for, what's happening. Especially when it comes around the delivery. I think that's the biggest thing, because people are often anxiously waiting for that package to arrive. And you know what? If there's a delay, that's actually okay. What's not okay is if your customer has to phone in, where's my parcel? So just communicate, we're all humans, but as long as you let them know, then they'll actually be mostly easy about it. But also after the sale, it's so important to keep communicating, and you can provide value to your customers. Make sure that they succeed with your product. For example, I buy seeds online for my garden, and that company, they will send a newsletter out every month with an overview of what you can plant that month per region. And I'm such a newbie gardener, so for me, it's perfect. And at the same time, then I'm like, oh, I wanted to plant pumpkins, but I don't have pumpkin seeds. So it prompts me to order, even though it's not a salesy newsletter, which is really well done. Then I also want to touch on the unboxing experience, because that's really a moment that you can delight people and make them feel special. One thing that I think is really easy and not labor intensive and kind of cheap to do is add a handwritten note. It's such a nice thing. I mean, I live quite remotely, so I order a ton online. And I love it when I get this handwritten note with my name on, maybe a reference to a previous order if I've been buying from them for a while, which makes me feel like they know me a little bit. So that's special. And then, of course, you can go crazy with, lovely branded tissue paper and stickers and things like that. And you can include little gifts, which, there could be samples. So it's a gift, it's something new to try. But if your customer then really likes it, then maybe they will purchase the full size and become a repeat customer. So it's a win-win, right? And then also, building that loyalty, the repeat from the customer, them buying from you over and over again. One of the things that I've seen work quite well is having a loyalty system with points, So buy something, for every $1 spent, you get a point, have 100 points, get a certain amount off, or get a free gift or something like that. That's a really nice way of doing things. And you can also host special events online nowadays, like VIP sneak peeks for the most loyal customers of what's coming up next. People really love that, and it makes them feel, special. So this is not just about getting to your first order, but also what's beyond that, and building your reputation, especially if you're new. That's really important. So invite your customers to leave reviews on your website. I mean, WooCommerce makes it super easy, right? So you'll just send them to the product page where they've bought from. I mean, I know that there's extensions out there that even automate that kind of follow-up when your orders grow. Super cool. And Google actually counts those reviews as unique content. So it's good for SEO as well. And when you build and add those reviews, people read a review and they almost weigh it as heavily. I saw a study about that as a personal recommendation. So yeah, super important that you work on those and build that reputation, that people know you're legit and your service is great. But even if you get a review that's not so great, that's okay. See it as an opportunity to improve your service or improve your products. So reach out to your customer and ask them smart questions about, what exactly made them feel that way, or, what exactly is happening, and figure that out. And then you can adjust your like I said, either your product or your service accordingly, and just keep improving your business and keep getting more and more positive reviews and experiences from your customers. Right. So
I've got some examples.
So we've got some examples, right, Jonathan? Please share them with us.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many examples, and we can all think about times where we've had either a really positive or negative customer experience. And I love that you said, like, you can have customers, right? But man, a happy customer makes such a difference. A couple of examples that come to mind for me. It wasn't too long ago. So when I bought this harmonica, simple purchase, didn't spend a lot of money for it. And I got a call from the company a couple of days after it arrived, and and I was like, I almost didn't answer, but I answered, and they weren't trying to sell me anything. They just wanted to say, hey, wanted to make sure that you got it. And I had it on me, and they wanted to just make sure that everything was good. It only took a few moments. There was no like tried to sell me anything. It was just like, we just want you to know we're here for you. And the message to me was clear. Like, oh, wow, they've noticed, they care. He's like, if I ever have any questions about other instruments, then I can contact him directly or go through the website. It was a simple thing, but that communicated to me a pretty powerful message of like, wow, even for a low-end product, they value my business. And, oh, man, wow. I mean, oftentimes where it really comes down to is like, you might get a review. So Noëlle brought up the reviews, right? You might get a review, and even if it's a negative review, like how you respond can do so much to give confidence to both the person who had the experience and those afterwards. So it really, like Noëlle said, it comes down to communication. Noëlle, any examples that you can think of either good experiences?
Yeah, for sure. So I like to buy things for the kitchen online, and I buy from this pretty big company. And what they'll do is, with every order, they include a little fridge magnet that's like cute illustrated, and there's some kind of pun about being in the kitchen or whatever. So of course those magnets end up on my fridge, and I'm building this little collection. And then when I go to my fridge and get something, you know how often I actually look at them and think about this company? It is so smart. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's so simple. And I mean, it's just a magnet. It can't cost that much to include, but the effect is very big.
That's so cool. Awesome. So wrapping this one up, and we're going to move into closing out the hour. At the end of the day, it's comes down to, well, that's the wrong button. There we go. It's about building relationships, right? And sorry, you're going to wrap up, and then I'll do the recap.
That's okay. But yes, it is about relationships, like it's not about transactions. There are enough companies who just think about transactions, that's not something that's going to take you far, in my opinion. It's about people. It's about building relationships, making it personal, and keep improving your business with the feedback that you get.
Awesome. Fantastic. So our focus here today was to talk about just the broader journey, right? We want to see you get started, and we want to make that as easy as possible. And in our experience, by focusing on these high level steps, that's where your mindset needs to be to really be able to do well in this space. So let's look at it again. It starts with choosing an audience. And we talked about how to do that. Choose an audience that you're either connected to, or someone else who's connected to. Find a problem to solve for that audience. And to do that, listen to them and follow their lead. Then sell something before you make it, right? Like take your idea and get it in front of them. Create an offer, test it with them, and then repeat as needed until you know that you've got a good fit. Create the product. Noëlle talked through different ways that you can go about it. At the end of the day, like this is where you really come in as the entrepreneur. Focus on creating a product that stays problem focused, that solves their needs. Ultimately, as you choose an operating system, think about what matters to you. And we recommend that you use WooCommerce and WordPress. We'd love to welcome you into the community and join all of us who are building on great open source software and part of this community. Get the product to your customer by focusing, and as you do so, focus on the experience. And then ultimately, this is all in service of creating happy customers that can become ambassadors for you. And you do that by focusing on building relationships with them and thinking about the long term. So as we're wrapping up, got a couple of resources that we want to share with you to support you in your journey as you're going through this process and getting started. Let me switch my screen here. So if you want to work with WooCommerce, go to woocommerce.com and just click start a new store. And that will walk you through the experience, and it'll give you all the things that you need to get going. If you want more on this topic, check out the WooCommerce blog. One good example, we did a 7-part series going over these same things where we go into this in more detail. And there's links in the chat, and we'll post follow-up afterwards as well, so you can get all of these. Also, we've talked about Facebook a few times. We have a great Facebook community with over 37,000 members where folks are asking questions, answering, and helping each other out. We highly recommend that you join that. And we'll be posting links to that. Also, wanted to give a quick shout out. So we have a fantastic volunteer team that works in the Facebook community. Like, everyone there is volunteering and answering questions, and we have a few people who have some specific things that they do to help out in the community, and we're always looking to grow that. We're adding a few more folks to the team. So if you have any interest in being like a closer part of that community, check out we're taking applications now for the community support team. We'll drop a link there in chat as well. I'd love for you to check that out. We have meetups that happen all around the world. And right now, what's especially special about that is that they're all virtual. So you can take a tour of the world right now and find a meetup in your area. I highly recommend that you find a local meetup, something that's in your region. We've added a bunch more, so you can go through this list and find something. If you can't find something, send us an email to meetups@woocommerce.com and tell us that you'd like a meetup in your area, and we'll get one up and running for you. But this is a great way to connect with folks where you can go through these topics and just get support and connect with others who are working through this. And last but not least, we will be kicking off WooCommerce Live Season 3 on January 20th. So we recommend that you RSVP for that, and we're still working on what topics we're going to cover, but there's going to be a lot of great stuff, and we'd love to have you join us for that. So those are the resources I've got. That's a wrap from me. Anna, I'll hand it back over to you for Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan and Noëlle. You did a great job.